India, it's often hailed as this land of opportunity with this, young and vibrant population. And everyone says they're poised to be, a global economic powerhouse.
Mhm.
But what if I told you that this very population
Mm.
is facing this challenge that's so vast that it could actually derail India's progress? We're talking about the looming unemployment crisis.
Right.
So forget those headlines about, this booming economy. The reality for millions of Indians is a constant struggle to find decent work.
Yeah, and what's fascinating here is that every year, um, basically a population the size of Bangalore is added to India's workforce. So that's something like 10 to 12 million new job seekers every year. And the economy just isn't generating enough opportunities to absorb them. We're looking at these unemployment rates.
Mm.
They're hovering around like a worrisome 7 to 8%. And that's really just the tip of the iceberg.
Wow, that's a powerful image. And it really makes you think, what's going on beneath the surface here? What's causing this disconnect between India's potential and this harsh reality that so many of its people are facing?
Well, one of the biggest hurdles is this skills gap. So imagine spending years getting your degree, only to graduate into a job market that basically has no use for your qualifications. It's like a nightmare scenario. But it's the reality for a staggering 42% of Indian graduates under the age of 25.
That's heartbreaking. So are we saying that the education system is failing to prepare young people for the real world?
In many ways, yes, there's this significant mismatch
Mm.
between what's being taught in colleges and the actual needs of industries. So we have this surplus of graduates in fields like humanities and theoretical sciences, while sectors like IT, healthcare, and green energy, they're really desperately seeking individuals with very specific technical
So it's
skills.
not just about having a degree, it's about having the right degree for a job market that's evolving at lightning speed. But hold on, we always hear about these government initiatives, like Ming in India, that are aimed at boosting manufacturing and creating jobs. Shouldn't that be helping?
On the surface, it seems like a perfect solution. You attract foreign investment, you ramp up manufacturing, and then you watch those jobs multiply, right? But the reality is so much more complex because despite all these efforts, the share of manufacturing in India's GDP has remained just stubbornly stagnant. It's stuck at around 17%. So it's just not translating into this widespread job creation that everyone was promised.
That's surprising. What about all the buzz around India's startup scene, all those unicorns popping up,
Yeah.
creating this cutting-edge technology, attracting all these global investors? Surely that must be generating some serious employment opportunities.
Oh, there's no denying the vibrancy of India's startup ecosystem. And these companies are creating jobs, but there's a catch because they primarily cater to this highly skilled workforce. So we're talking software engineers, data scientists, digital marketers. And while this segment of the population is definitely reaping the benefits, it really does very little to address the needs of the vast majority who lack those specialized skills.
It sounds like we're kind of witnessing this emergence of two parallel economies in India. You've got the high-tech, globalized world of startups, and then this other massive segment of the workforce that's being left behind.
Precisely. And that's where the issue of the informal sector becomes really critical because over 80% of jobs in India fall under this category, which essentially means low wages, no benefits, and zero job security. So think of it as like this constant struggle for survival, with millions of people trapped in this cycle of precarious employment.
Okay, so we've got this massive skills gap, we've got a sluggish manufacturing sector, and then this informal sector.
Right.
That's teeming with people who are desperate for a stable livelihood. It's a pretty sobering picture. But I know there are also these incredible efforts happening on the ground, right? Local communities finding these innovative ways to create jobs. Social enterprises tackling specific challenges.
Absolutely. There's a lot of energy and ingenuity that's bubbling up at the grassroots level, which is incredibly encouraging. We've seen some really inspiring examples of women in rural Rajasthan who have come together to make and sell solar lamps, bringing light and economic empowerment to their villages. And these initiatives really showcase the power of local solutions, but they often struggle to scale up and reach a wider population.
That brings us to a question that's on everyone's minds these days. What about the robots? How is automation impacting the job landscape in India, especially with so many jobs already at risk?
Yeah, it's definitely a major concern. The World Bank actually predicted that a staggering 69% of jobs in India are susceptible to automation. So to put that into perspective, imagine 2 out of every 3 jobs disappearing. It's a stark reality that we need to prepare for.
Okay, that's got to be terrifying for a lot of people. So is learning to code the only way to survive in this robot revolution? I'm half joking, but it does make you wonder. What skills are going to be essential in a future where machines are taking over?
Well, While digital skills are undeniably crucial, it's not just about coding. It's about things like adaptability, creative problem solving, and a willingness to continuously learn and evolve. These are the qualities that are going to allow individuals to thrive in this rapidly changing job market, regardless of what profession they choose.
That makes sense. But it also raises the question, what about the millions of people who don't have access to those opportunities for upskilling and reskilling?
That's where the role of the government becomes really crucial. There have been several initiatives launched with varying degrees of success. So take the Skill India program, for example. Over 40 million people have been trained. But the actual placement rate, so the number of people who actually find jobs afterwards, hovers between like a dismal 15 and 20%. So clearly something's not working.
So what's the disconnect? Are these programs just failing to provide the right skills that employers are looking for? Or is there something more fundamental at play here?
That's a question worth exploring further. And speaking of these changing landscapes, we can't ignore the rise of the gig economy. It's become this global phenomenon, promising, things like flexibility and empowerment. But what are the implications for Indian workers, especially in terms of job security and social safety nets?
Okay, so we've got this complex mix of challenges and opportunities. With the gig economy adding another layer of complexity to the equation, it's clear that India's job crisis is this multifaceted beast that's demanding a multi-pronged approach. But where do we even begin to untangle this knot? What are some of the potential solutions that could create a more equitable and sustainable future for India's workforce?
Well, instead of getting, bogged down by the sheer scale of the problem, let's shift our focus to those glimmers of hope. Remember those women in Rajasthan creating solar lamps? That's just one example of the incredible ingenuity and resilience that we see at the grassroots level.
I love those stories. They really highlight the power of human potential. But how do we scale those efforts up? How do we go from these isolated success stories to widespread impact?
Well, that's where strategic policy comes in. Access to microfinance is crucial. Imagine if these women could easily secure small loans to expand their businesses.
Oh, that makes sense.
And then there's also this whole issue of regulations. Often these well-intentioned policies actually end up creating these bureaucratic hurdles that just stifle small businesses. So streamlining those processes could really unleash a wave of entrepreneurial energy.
So it's not just about throwing money at the problem. It's about creating an environment where small businesses and local initiatives can actually thrive. Are there any regions in India that are doing a particularly good job at this ministry?
Some states are definitely leading the way. Kerala, for example, has made significant investments in these vocational training programs that are very closely aligned with the needs of local industries. And Tamil Nadu has been very successful in fostering this culture of entrepreneurship, particularly in the manufacturing sector. And these states are really proving that with the right policies and this focus on local empowerment, positive change is definitely possible.
Okay, so we've got some good examples to learn from. But let's not forget about those millions of young people who are pouring into the workforce each year. What needs to happen in the education system to better equip them for this rapidly changing job market?
Here's where we need to get a little radical. Imagine a system where vocational training is actually integrated into mainstream education, starting from a much earlier age. So instead of treating it as this kind of second-tier option for those who don't excel academically, we need to make it like a core part of the curriculum. Think about Germany's apprenticeship model. Students spend, part of their time in school and part of their time actually getting this hands-on experience in real work environments.
That sounds like a fantastic way to bridge the gap between theory and practice. Students would graduate with both the knowledge
Yeah,
and the practical skills needed to hit the ground running.
exactly. And it also helps them build these valuable networks
Yeah.
and gain a realistic understanding of what different careers actually entail.
But let's be honest, there's also a cultural element at play here. In India, there's often this strong emphasis on, traditional safe career paths, like engineering or medicine or government jobs. How do we shift that mindset and encourage young people to be more open to these diverse career options?
You've hit on a really crucial point. We need to start celebrating a wider range of career paths and really acknowledge the value of skills and expertise in these various fields. So parents, educators, and society as a whole need to kind of move away from the stigma that's often associated with vocational training or non-traditional careers.
I completely agree. It's about recognizing that there's no one-size-fits-all definition of success. Different people have different talents and passions,
Yeah.
and we need to create an environment where those diverse paths are not just tolerated but celebrated.
Precisely. We need to empower young people to explore their interests, develop their skills, and ultimately find work that is truly fulfilling, whether that's in technology or healthcare, the arts, or any other field, where they can contribute and thrive.
It's a powerful vision, a future where India's workforce is as diverse and dynamic as its culture. But if we had to pick just one policy change, that could make a significant dent in this job crisis. What would it be?
That's a tough question, but if I had to choose, I'd say a complete overhaul of the education system. We need to weave vocational training into the fabric of education, starting as early as Class 8, perhaps even earlier. And this would require, a massive investment in infrastructure, teacher training, and curriculum development.
It sounds like a monumental undertaking, but I can definitely see how the long-term benefits would far outweigh those initial costs.
Absolutely. It's about investing in human potential and creating a future where India's workforce is equipped not just for the jobs of today, but for the jobs of tomorrow.
Speaking of tomorrow, we can't ignore the elephant in the room, technology. It's both a disruptor and an enabler. How do we navigate this rapidly changing landscape and ensure that people are prepared for a future that's increasingly shaped by automation and AI?
We need to invest in reskilling and upskilling programs that are like laser focused on the skills of the future. So think data analysis, digital marketing, cybersecurity, green technologies. These are fields that are booming, and they're going to need this massive influx of talent.
So it's not just about teaching people how to code. It's about equipping them with this wider set of digital skills and nurturing a mindset of continuous learning and adaptation.
Precisely. And we need to remember that technology is only one piece of the puzzle. We also need to think about, social safety nets and support systems for those who might be displaced by automation.
That's a crucial point. It's about ensuring that everyone benefits from technological progress, not just a select few. But what about the jobs that are most at risk? What can be done to support those workers?
That's where reskilling programs and social safety nets become really essential. We need to ensure that people have access to things like income support, healthcare, and opportunities to learn those new skills. If their jobs are automated, it's about managing that transition and ensuring that no one is left behind.
So it's not about trying to stop technological progress. It's about harnessing its power, while also creating a safety net for those who might be negatively impacted.
Exactly. And it's also about thinking creatively, about new job opportunities that might emerge as a result of these technological advancements.
Like what? What kind of new jobs are we talking about?
Well, as we transition towards a more sustainable future, there's going to be this surge in demand for professionals in areas like renewable energy, waste management, and the circular economy, and the healthcare sector. It is likely to see massive growth, especially in areas like elder care and mental health.
It's not all doom and gloom. There are opportunities on the horizon, if we can anticipate them and prepare for them. But it sounds like addressing India's job gap, it's not just the responsibility of the government. It's this collective effort that involves businesses, educational institutions, and individuals themselves.
Absolutely. It's a societal issue that demands a collective response.
Okay, so we've talked about the challenges, the potential solutions, the need for this multifaceted approach. But let's zoom out for a second and look at the bigger picture. How does this job crisis impact India's overall economic growth and its position on the global stage?
That's where things get really interesting. India has all the ingredients to become a global economic powerhouse. But this job crisis is a major roadblock, because if millions of young people can't find decent work, it's not just a personal tragedy, it's an economic drag. It affects things like productivity and innovation and overall competitiveness.
So it's not just a social issue, it's an economic imperative to tackle this challenge head on.
Exactly. And there are also these geopolitical implications as well, because a large, young, and frustrated population
And limited
opportunities is basically a recipe for social unrest, which can have these ripple effects across the region and beyond.
So the stakes are incredibly high. But despite the enormity of the challenge, I'm sensing this thread of hope. Running through our conversation, India is a nation that's brimming with talent, innovation, and resilience. It feels like there's this real opportunity here to kind of rewrite this narrative of success. We've talked about the need for systemic change and all that. But
Yeah.
what about at like the individual level? Those mindsets, there's still a certain stigma attached to, those professions that are seen as less prestigious or secure. How do we change that perception?
Yeah, it's about broadening our definition of success
Yeah.
and moving away from this narrow focus on, high salaries and corporate ladders. What if success was about finding work that's fulfilling, work that uses your unique talents and allows you to contribute something meaningful to the world?
That's a much more holistic view. Valuing a skilled artisan just as much as a high-powered executive, celebrating the teacher who shapes young minds, or the farmer who feeds a community.
Exactly. And imagine if we highlighted the stories of those who've actually found fulfillment by forging their own paths. Role models are so powerful. Let's show young people that there's no single blueprint for success.
I love that. Celebrating those trailblazers who are rewriting the rules.
Mm.
But what about the parents? They play such a huge role in shaping their children's aspirations. How do we get them on board with this kind of broader perspective?
That's such a key point. We need to engage parents in this conversation.
Yeah.
And help them understand that the world of work is changing so rapidly that, those safe career paths might not even exist in a few years. It's about equipping their children with the adaptability to navigate this really uncertain future, not clinging to these outdated notions of success.
So it's about empowering young people to be, the architects of their own futures, not trying to force them into a mold that's no longer relevant.
Precisely. And that requires a real shift in mindset, at the individual level, at the family level, and within society as a whole. It's about embracing the unknown, celebrating diversity, and fostering a culture of lifelong learning.
It feels like addressing India's job gap goes so far beyond just creating jobs. It's about building this more equitable and inclusive society where everyone has the chance to reach their full potential, regardless of their chosen path.
I couldn't agree more. It's a complex challenge, but it's also this incredible opportunity to reimagine the future of work in India and create a model for sustainable and inclusive growth.
What a powerful thought. So to our listeners, we leave you with this. What role can you play in shaping this future? How can you contribute to creating a society where everyone has a chance to thrive? It's time to think beyond those traditional paradigms and embrace a future where everyone has the opportunity to shine. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into India's job gap. Until next time, keep those brain cells buzzing.